Whoa, what's good, my fellow conservative patriots? It's your boy Kevin. Welcome back to the channel. The women's college basketball tournament this year set the all-time record for most viewers, and that is because of one player and one player only, and that is Catlin Clark. Catlin Clark is absolutely filthy. Now, I don't typically watch women's college basketball, but Catlin Clark is her. She is dominant, and she set the all-time points record for the women's college basketball tournament. And Catlin Clark just happens to be white. She just happens to be white. And she just happens to be the best college basketball player in the country right now. Maybe the best women's basketball player in the world right now. And she dominated this tournament, led the Iowa Hawkeyes to the championship game. And what do you know? ESPN and other commentators had to make this racial. They had to make it racial. And that's no surprise. Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. All right, so let's set the stage here. First, Iowa runs through a bunch of teams. They make it to the Final Four, okay? They square up against South Carolina. South Carolina hasn't lost a game all year. They're 32-0. They've won every single game they've played, and they've been dominant. They have a bunch of giant, huge chicks out there, 6'5" girl, 6'7" girl, and their coach, Don Staley. Don Staley is a race-baiting, just disgusting human being, okay? So South Carolina loses to Iowa prior to the game. Iowa's coach was being interviewed, and she was giving praise to South Carolina. She was saying that these girls are really big, they're really tough, and it's going to be a bar fight out there. When you say something like that, when you say it's going to be a battle, it's going to be a fight, it's going to be a war out in that court, you're saying that the other team is good. You're giving the other team a compliment. But what did Don Staley, the head coach of South Carolina's women's basketball team, do? She made it racial. She lost the game, and during the post-game press conference, she went racial. Because that's what people who lack intelligence, that's what people who lack the ability to express what really happened do. They turn to the easiest outlet, and that is making it racial. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
The truth about our team, okay? It's a good question, okay? We're not bar fighters. We're not thugs.
We're not bar fighters. We're not thugs. Okay, the Iowa coach never intended this to be disrespectful. This is something that is said as a compliment. As an athlete my whole life, this is something that is said as a compliment. It is not a hit on your kids. It is not a hit on you. It is not a hit on your program. It is a compliment, you idiot.
We're not monkeys.
We're not monkeys. There she goes. There she makes it racial. All the time this is happening now, and it has to stop. If somebody is truly racist, then that person needs to be dealt with, okay? If somebody is truly racist and is discriminating against African Americans or any other race, that person needs to be dealt with. But people who cry wolf like Don Staley also need to be dealt with. She should be fired for this bullshit. You cannot do this. You cannot cry wolf because it discredits other people who have truly dealt with racism.
We're not street fighters. This team exemplifies how you need to approach basketball on the court and off.
Lisa Bluder, the head coach of Iowa, was giving your team a compliment, and you got your ass kicked. You got your ass handed to you, and you lost. Own it. Don't turn it into some racial bullshit that never even happened.
Off the court. And I do think that that's sometimes brought into the game, and it hurts. Okay. And I do think that some of I'm gonna say it because I said I was gonna say it, whether we lost or whether we won. Some of the people in the media, when you're gathering in public, you're saying things about our team and you're being heard, and it's being brought back to me. And these are the people that write nationally for our sport.
Nobody did that. It's not true. You cannot find one article calling South Carolina women's basketball players monkeys, like she just said. You cannot find one article calling South Carolina women's basketball players thugs. And the Iowa coach, Lisa Bluter, didn't say that either. What you are doing is you are creating some faux racism, fake racism. That's what you're doing. You're trying to cultivate racism because you lost. Your kids lost. Own it. Move on. Say, good job, Iowa. We played hard. We didn't have it today, and we lost. Congratulate the other side. But what does she do? She plays the fake racism game, and she should be fired. There's no excuse for that. Just like there's no excuse for actual racism. If somebody in the media or another player that was competing against South Carolina did call South Carolina monkeys and thugs, they should be dealt with. That person should be fired, just like Dawn Staley should be dealt with, and Dawn Staley should be fired. Okay, so Iowa moves on. They're slated to face LSU in the championship game. LSU's best player, Angel Reese. Angel Reese is a thug. I'll say it. She's a thug. I'm not saying that because she's black. There's a lot of white people who are thugs as well. I don't see people based on their identity. I don't see people based on their skin color. I see people based on their actions. And I'm judging Angel Reese, LSU's best player, based on her actions. And let's take a look at those actions. So the score right now is 98-82. This game is over. Iowa didn't have their best game that night. LSU played good. The referees were bullshit, and Iowa's best players got in foul trouble early. It limited their potential, and they lost the game. This game is over. There's 53 seconds left. LSU has a 16-point lead. What is Angel Reese? The best player for LSU, a future WNBA player, high draft pick in the WNBA after next season. What does she do? She chases around Catlin Clark, who is much better than Angel Reese, and taunts her. Let's take a look. That is disrespectful. It is terrible sportsmanship, and it is a thuggish thing to do. And if Catlin Clark had done that, then I would be saying the same thing. Now, trash talk during the game is one thing. And we have seen videos of Catlin Clark trash talking during the game when the game is still competitive. But after the game is over, after the game is decided, you don't continue to trash talk. You say, good job. It was competitive out there. Tough game. You played good. Good game. During the game, trash talking is fair game out there. You can trash talk all you want. But once the game is decided, once you're up 17 points in the national championship game, you don't continue to trash talk. That is bullshit. And that is a thuggish thing to do. And then after the game, Angel Reese is at a press conference, and it gets even worse. Let's take a listen at what she had to say post-game. A complete joke.
To know that, so many people are talking about women's basketball. Isn't that a good thing?
I'm happy. All year I was critiqued about who I was. The narrative, I don't fit the narrative. I don't fit in the box that y'all want me to be in. I'm too hood, I'm too ghetto. Y'all told me that all year. But when...
Nobody told you that. Nobody said that. Not one person said that you were too hood or too ghetto. And you don't fit in the box. Women's college basketball players don't look like you. The majority of women's college basketball looks like you. That's why Catlin Clark was so unique to everybody, because she looks different. Catlin Clark doesn't fit in the box as a traditional women's basketball player, because the majority of women's college basketball and basketball as a whole is African American, right? Now, that could be construed as racist, but it's just the truth. And nobody said you were too thug or too hood. And if they had said that, then that would be racist, and they should be dealt with. But the fact that Dawn Staley and Angel Reese are manufacturing these claims of racism out of thin air needs to be talked about. It needs to be highlighted, and it has to stop. Because when they do stuff like this, when people do stuff like this and manufacture claims of racism and cry wolf when there is no wolf, then real claims of racism get left unheard because people think that it's bullshit, because people are manufacturing bullshit out of thin air. It doesn't work. It doesn't get you attention. It doesn't bring you sympathy. And it can't bring you sympathy because it's not real. It didn't happen.
Other people do it. Y'all don't say nothing. So this was for the girls that look like me, that's going to speak up on what they believe in.
The girls that look like you. The majority of women's college basketball looks like you.
It's unapologetically you. And that's what I did it for tonight. This was for it was bigger than me tonight. It was bigger than me. Twitter is going to go in a rage every time.
Apparently not, because you're making it all about you. You're making it all about you. Now, she's a young girl. She has a lot to learn. She has to grow up, obviously. And I really don't think she's a thug. I'm sure she's a smart young girl. But she needs to grow up because she's acting like an idiot. She's acting like a moron, and this is one of the dumbest press conferences I have ever heard. Angel Reese got kicked out of her first university, even though she's a 6'4" athletic woman, and that is rare. That is rare to have a 6'4" woman who can move like Angel Reese can move. And she still got kicked out of her first college because of her shenanigans and her attitude and behavior, and they had to transfer into LSU. So Angel Reese made it about her. Nobody made it about her. Nobody tuned in to watch Angel Reese. Sure, she's the best player on LSU who was in the national championship game. But if Catlin Clark wasn't in that game, the numbers, there was 10 million people who watched the game. I bet you the numbers would be in half if Catlin Clark wasn't in that national championship game. If it was LSU versus South Carolina, those numbers would have been chopped in half. And it got even worse. It became even more racial as Dave Portnoy, founder of Barstool Sports, tweeted. And he called Angel Reese a classless piece of shit. And Twitter went absolutely haywire, and it became a race war on Twitter, and everybody was attacking Dave Portnoy. But I agree. She was acting. I don't know her. I don't know Angel Reese as a person. Maybe she's a really nice, classy person. But that night, at the end of that game, she was acting like a classless piece of shit. And that has nothing, once again, has nothing to do with her race. If Catlin Clark had done the exact same thing in the exact same manner, I would say that was classless. And she was acting like a classless piece of shit. However, Catlin Clark didn't. And she ate it. She ate it. I would not be able to control myself if Angel Reese was in my face, pointing at her finger, doing this, up 17, about to win the national championship. If it's mid-game, once again, if it's mid-game, it's different. If you're in the heat of competition, mid-game, it's completely different. The game hasn't been decided yet. But once the game is decided, you treat your opponent with respect. So obviously, ESPN and Stephen A. Smith had to get into the fray and make it even more racial. Let's take a listen.
But I'm going a step further with this. We all know that there's a white-black issue here, because the fact of the matter is when Catlin did it, people were celebrating it.
Catlin Clark did not do it when the game was already decided. Catlin Clark did it and during the middle of the game. She did it real quick, talking a little bit of shit. Angel Reese did it once the game was already decided. Followed Catlin Clark around the court like a dog nipping at your heels, an annoying little dog that wouldn't shut up after the game was already decided. That is the difference. There's nothing racial about that. It is just the truth. So yeah, Stephen A. Smith, ESPN, no surprise here, making it racial, turning it into a racial epitome, racial dog whistle. The left always likes to say racial dog whistle. Well, we just saw about 15 racial dog whistles. Who is making this racial? It was not racial. There's nothing racial about it. They manufactured race and put it into this situation. If Catlin Clark had done the same exact thing, I would be making the same exact video, except there would not be the racial dog whistles involved. And it gets even funnier as Jill Biden, the First Lady of the United States, even Jill Biden knew this was a bad look for Angel Reese. So typically the winning team will get invited to the White House, but Jill Biden invites both teams. She invites Iowa as well for being a good sport because Catlin Clark didn't throw a punch at somebody who deserved to get a punch thrown. And I typically don't agree with anything at all coming out of this administration, coming out of this White House, but I do think this is kind of funny, and Angel Reese got pissed off. She got super pissed off and called the whole thing a joke. So it's nothing new here. We have the left of making things that aren't racial into racial situations. We have Catlin Clark dominating women's college basketball. She'll be back next year. And I think the WNBA sucks. I would not watch the WNBA with your time, but it was actually fun to watch this women's college basketball tournament. And let me know what you think about this whole situation in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button for me, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.